Hey guys, welcome back to another season of the Waiting Talks. We are on season 4, episode 1. Let's go. We're so happy that you guys decided to come back and listen for another episode and another season. And this time we have new updates. You can actually see our faces, our glowing faces. I know you guys have been waiting for that for a long time. So now you can see all of our expressions, and just we hope that in this you feel like you're part of the discussion and you're getting to really know the guests and your hosts here. So we're happy that you guys are here, and today we have some very special guests. We have Allen and Princy. We have known them for a while. Allen, I personally met. I feel like I've had interactions with him before in the past, like with ICPF and stuff, but then I really got to meet him when he and his band of buddies in Oklahoma had a matchmaking thing, and they helped me basically meet my now husband. So, God works in funny ways. So I think that was such a cool experience for me. And we got to know Princey after they got married, and, now we all live in like the same area and we can actually see each other. And for Rachel had probably a little bit more of an interesting encounter. She had visited and stayed in Oklahoma for a little while, and while she was here in her visit, she went to Hebron Church, and Allen and Princy go to church there. This was before Princy was in America, and I think Rachel met Allen, and without even doing full introductions, he proceeded to roasting her, and thus began the friendship. And now we're all here today. So we hope you guys hear a little bit of that humor and you get a little bit of the vibe with Allen and Princy. They're a lot of fun. But talking about real life, Allen is a software engineer and Princy is a nurse. Oh no. They are really great people, and they're actively involved in their community. And so we're really excited to have them here. So to start it off, I've talked a lot. I am going to start the conversation with a little bit of an icebreaker. So, Alan and Princey, I have a question for you. My question is, would you rather sit in the lion's den or would you rather be swallowed by a whale? How would you navigate whichever situation you chose?
Do you want to go first? Or you want me I'm Alan, if you guys didn't know that. So I would um I would pick the lion's den because I am very sensitive to smell. So if I'm in the belly of the fish, like I'll probably I think I'll pass out more. And like because of the smell and then the stomach acids and it's gonna be dark, you know what I'm saying? Like I just can't stand all that. So how would I navigate it? Like our big brother Daniel gave us an example, just to like pray and trust in the Lord. And so if the Lord sends like an angel to save me, or if I die, I'm still meeting my Savior. So and so that's how I'm gonna navigate my situations. But at least it won't be like dark and like smelling bad.
I think for me, it would be the other. It would be being swallowed by the whale because I know that there's enough room for me to like lay down. And if I'm like inside the whale for 3 days, I have enough room to be at rest. And then I can also like tickle inside and see if the whale would vomit me out. So yeah, I think, yeah, that would be my answer.
Those are some really good answers, and you can tell that even being a couple that they think and strategize differently. So when you guys are both placed in like a hard situation, both y'all's critical thinking will, and of course with the help of the Lord. I love that. I love both of y'all's answer for that. Thank you again, Alan and Princey, just for joining us, even as we pilot the video podcasting for this season. You guys are our first guests, and just hearing y'all's testimony and how the Lord brought y'all through together too is so powerful and just a testament of God's faithfulness. And so that's why you guys were on our hearts just to call on, so that way you guys can share your story and also encourage other people that are in the wait as well. I also want to thank you guys. I feel like Alan is very blunt in the way when he shares his advice even over the years whenever I've talked to him. And just when you're just so blunt in the way that you just say it as it is, but that's also with what the Lord has on your heart too. And then I think Princey also adds the grace to it as well. So both of you guys combined together
That's
will
a
reach
good
many
balance there.
people. There's a good balance
Good,
there.
a good Lord balanced it out.
Hey, working. I say it's something called sanctification. The Lord is working in me, you know. I've gotten gracious over the years, Rachel.
Maybe after marriage. But it leads us to our next question. Tell us about your story and what this waiting season has looked like for both of you guys.
I think I'll start. I'm from India. I was born and raised in a town called Lucknow. In the year, like fast forward in the year 2022, my parents were like actively looking for proposals for me. And while they were like looking for proposals, there were like multiple proposals that like came, and then none of it gave me peace. I would talk to those people, but there was no peace at all. And I would say no immediately, or maybe in a day or two. And fast forward to April of 2022, this his proposal comes to me, and my sister sends me a picture of him and also just a brief introduction of who he is. And from there, I was like, okay, since this is a proposal, let's just like talk. And I think 2 weeks later is when he texted me for the first time. And I was like, hi, Rachel, this is Allen. My brother gave me your number. And from there it started. And from there it started. We started talking. And then for a month straight, we had an intentional conversation. So we had told our parents that once we start talking and if we feel peace about it, we want to talk for quite some time before we decide on getting married, and they respected that. They were on board with us, and so we talked for a month straight, and every single day we were intentional in our conversations. Used to like we used to our reference was one of the Desiring God
Articles.
article, and from that article we had questions, and we would ask like questions every single day to get to know each other better. Those questions would start from like smallest things, like from likes to dislikes, and it would go up till how would you handle finance, how would you like talks about future kids and talks about your future desires, and also like spiritual aspects as well. So we were intentional in talking, and a month later is when we decided that we wanted to get married. And every single day, the initial peace that we had, it grew, and it was more of a confirmation that, okay, this is what, for me, it was more of a confirmation that he is what I want as my husband, and this is what I want to step into. And fast forward, we got engaged in India. We decided to get engaged in India and then get married in the US. There were multiple factors for us to reach to that decision. We wanted to get married, we wanted to get engaged in India and then get married in the US. But that from engagement to marriage, it took us 2 years. We got engaged in October of 2022 and we got married in September of 2024. And so that wait from 2022 to 2024 has shaped us to who we are today. And it has definitely drawn us individually closer to God, but also as a family closer to God. And do you want to continue?
I think in the beginning stages, like I remember I was very hesitant in like wanting to talk to her because I remember like my aunt first reached out to me and so she sent me a picture of Princey and I said no right away just because I didn't want to talk to any girls from India. Just like I saw my brother go through that where like he found somebody from India and like and then he had to wait a long time for like my sister-in-law to come to America and so I saw like the struggle that he had like the waiting that he had to go through and then there's so many like chachas at our church where they did the same thing where they got married in India and then when they filed for the spouse visa, it's like they waited a long time, and so I think that it was like it was like a wrestle, like for me. And I remember like that 2 weeks when what Princey said, like I was praying, like I was just like, okay, Lord, like if this is something you're wanting me to do, like, give me that peace. And so I think the first week I did not feel the peace at all. So it's like it was more like I think I was just wrestling with the Lord because whenever I think about like like my wedding, I'm not thinking about like who I'm getting married to, but I'm thinking about like my friends and family who are going to be there, right? And so when I'm like thinking about, man, like if the wedding happens in India, like not any of my loved ones are not going to be there. Like, how is this like a good thing? And like that was like one of the things I brought it up with the Lord. I was just like, man, Lord, if marriage is from you, like, why am I not happy about this? But at the same time, like, I was also praying, like, Lord, like, let your will be done. And so, yeah, like, whoever is praying that prayer, like, just be, just be ready. Like, I hope you know what you're praying for because, like, God will take you, like, in that season of, like, humbleness, like, when you pray that prayer. And so I think like that first week I didn't feel the peace, but then I was also like talking to Jeff. By the way, his episode was the favorite episode ever in this waiting talks. It's not like he told me to say that. So Jeff, I talked to my best friend Zach, and then there's another elder of our church like Jitu. And so I was just constantly just talking to them. And so all three of them said the same thing. They were like, hey, just talk to her. And if you don't feel peace, you just move on. Jeff was like very blunt in saying like, just see it as a job interview. If you don't like it, you just move on kind of thing. And so yeah, man, like I think it was just like that 1 month of when we were talking was really helpful. One good thing about proposals is that like we don't have to wait 4 or 5 months to figure out if we like each other. It was more of like, okay, we want to head towards marriage, so let's just be intentional in asking those questions. And so, yeah, I think other than that, like, yeah, like our waiting has been at that time. I feel like it was easy, but at the same time, it was hard too. But I think seeing her right now in this scenario, I think it's cool because God was so faithful in all of that, right?
And so, like, to add on to what the waiting season has looked for us, like he said, it was definitely just to give a background information. I came on a fiance visa, and like he said, since he saw a lot of people go through spouse visa, we didn't want to go that route because both of us, we were on the same page that we want to start our marriage together and we don't want to get married and then be in a long distance. We were fine in getting engaged and being in a long distance versus getting married and being in a long distance. And so that was one of the reasons why we chose fiance visa. And so it was like with a lot of prayer that we decided to go the fiance visa route. But with every person who came to the US through the fiance visa, they had come like years and years back, and during that time it would only take them like 3 to 6 months. And so believing that, and even in our like researches, we were ignorant. We were like, yeah, it's just 6 months. Months will
Like
go by.
1 year max, but
Yeah.
it's like
Uh,
nothing more than a year. Like 1 year was like the all the articles were saying. So
And we were like, we did our researches, like superficial researches, and we were like excited about getting married. And so we decided to apply for fiance visa, thinking that it'll just be either 6 months to an year, only for us to find that because of COVID, we had a massive backlog. So there were like 2 lakh cases ahead of us that had to be resolved before ours would be taken into consideration. And so we didn't know any of that
and
when we actually filed for it.
yeah,
Go ahead.
and also like the with the 2 lakh or like like around 1 million, like it was a we filed to the Dallas embassy, but then because of this like backlog, like they were transferring all our paperwork, like fiance and the spouse visas, like they were transferring all that to California. So only one embassy was like looking at our application. So because of that, like, there was like a huge backlog. And then they were, what was the date they said? Like if you don't hear,
By July of 2024.
and then there's no way to contact them before that. There was no email, no phone number. So we're just like, what the heck? It's like we're just waiting for no reason, like waiting for a long time.
Yeah. And so, because we thought that it would only take us 6 months, I quit my job in Delhi and I came back to stay with my parents, thinking that, hey, it's just 6 months. Let me be intentional in spending time with my family and getting myself ready for marriage and getting my like dress ready and everything. And I think it was around December or January of 2023 when I figured out that, okay, so this is going to take a long time and I don't have a job at the moment. And by then, because we live in a community where a lot of people get married right after engagement, or they just take a week or two and then they get married, or maybe a couple of months. And since in my community, there was no one who had done a fiance visa before, so I had to go through a lot of like negative comments, and there were not a lot of people who were like supportive of this idea.
Hmm.
Um, and so while he was going through a different journey, my journey was entirely different, with being around people who were discouraging, who would like discourage and be like, hey, you could have done this, you could have done that, instead of waiting on a fiance visa. And also, to add up to that, I did not have a job at that moment. And so I was pretty much at home taking care of my family and being around my family. And so that was like one part to it. But the beautiful side to that is, even through all of that, we could see how God was opening one door after the other to let us know that this is the final destination, and I'm opening the right doors at the right time for you to see, that I'm confirming things for you to know that, hey, this is the final destination. And so while we were waiting, I was able to get my all my tests done. I was able to get my IELTS and NCLEX. And so all of that was like mini steps or mini doors towards my moving to the US. And like he said, though the journey to begin with, we thought that it would be an easy journey. 6 months would go by really fast, but it did not. Every single day, I think both of us, we would wake up with a hope that today would be the day we would hear from USCIS, and then the day would go by, no news, no update, and then we would sleep trusting in the Lord that tomorrow would be the day we hear from USCIS. And I think 2 years it went by. Every day was hard, but it went by. And every single day it was us relying on the Lord. Every single day we were like we were getting closer to the Lord, trusting Him. But also at the same time, I think what He taught us during that journey was trusting Him with uncertainty. Because 6 months in our head was a certain date. Like we were like, okay, 6 months, we know after 6 months we will be with each other. But then after 6 months, there was no certainty at all. We
Hmm.
didn't know when we are going to hear from USCIS. We didn't know when my visa would be approved. It could take a year, it could take 2 years, it could take 10 years. And so there was no certainty. And so I think both of us, we learned to trust the Lord in uncertainty, and it shaped us in a way we wouldn't have been shaped otherwise. And so, yeah.
Um, yeah, man, I love our community, but at the same time, like I think the misconception is like just because we call someone uncle and auntie, they think that like they have the right to give us like advice or all that. And so a lot of times during the waiting, like Princey went through like a what season of like a lot of people were just putting her down instead of like just encouraging her. When we were waiting for a long time, like they were like literally like aunties coming up to her and just saying like I'm bored of seeing your face, and then like why is this taking forever? Like is Alan cheating on you? Like all these things, right? And so, and then even here, like in Oklahoma, like, like random aunties are going up to my mom and saying like, hey, like, did Alan call this number or call that number? And then my mom is like asking me, she's like, why aren't you doing all this? And so I'm like, bro, there's no number. I think it was just like the society, like making comments, thinking that like they're trying to help us, but like it was just like actually like hurting us, like opposite. And so I think Princey went through a lot of that, like, and like being like her fiance is just like at that moment, like I'm feeling helpless, right? Because like first of all, we're in a different time zone. We're like thousands of miles away. And so it's like whatever she's hearing in the morning, like I'm like already sleeping at night. And so she's like listening to all of this, and like it's not just like random people, right? Like people like extended family members and friends who like just hurting like with their words, right? But then they think that they're loving us in some sort. And so it's like, yeah, man, like, I think the waiting was hard because of like those comments. I don't think we ever doubted who God is. Like even prior to our waiting season, we've gone through like a lot of different trials and tribulations like leading up to it. Like my mom having a stroke back in 2015 and like her heart conditions, and seeing God being faithful in that, right? And being so kind in that. Like I never questioned his character. Like even with Princey, she had things going on back in 2020. And so I think like we never questioned God's character. I think it was just the waiting became hard when all we were like not from everybody, but like when we were hearing negative things from the people, that's when it got hard, and that's when we were like, okay, we just had to keep reminding ourselves like the Lord, like we just gonna come back to you and just help us to fix our eyes on you, help us to know that you never change regardless of what people say, right? But yeah, I think that's like the glimpse of like what we went through in our waiting.
You guys definitely spoke on that very eloquently and kind of really shed light on how heavy it can be when you're walking in your waiting season. Like I was getting teary-eyed just like hearing it because that's a lot to be able to shoulder. And I'm so glad that you guys, even though you couldn't physically comfort each other and like talk it through physically, you guys still prayed with each other, but also relied on the Lord personally and together because, yeah, that's the only thing that can sometimes really bring us through the waiting season in a proper way, right? So, guys, thank you so much for sharing that story too, because it's real, and I think a lot of people in our community and even beyond our community experience that, and sometimes they never say it out loud. So, I'm sure more than one person connected to certain parts of y'all's story, and it's even beautiful just like seeing you guys on the camera right now, seeing that God in his timing actually brought it together at the end of the day. And like you guys said, like we saw you guys at the wedding. We saw how beautiful it was when you guys realized like this is the moment that God brought together at his timing. We were like crying in the audience. We were like, "Oh my gosh." Only you guys probably knew the depth of how much it hurt to walk through all of that, but it was so worth it when you walk into all of that, into all that God was, asking of you guys and pushing you towards. So thank you guys for sharing. I thought that was just so beautiful. So the next question I wanted to ask is kind of in relation to just like as you were going along in your waiting season, especially like you're saying a lot of people discouraged you, and sometimes it's really hard for people to get back up when they've been discouraged or when they feel really down and out. Was there any like scripture passage in the Bible that kind of encouraged you? Was there anything that the Lord said to you in your waiting that really encouraged you? And that potentially, like, if someone has a similar story right now or could in the future as well, could encourage them?
Yeah, I think throughout the waiting, like God would speak to us like in different ways and stuff like that. But one of the highlights of our waiting time was like we got like a partial rejection in our visa stuff. And so I remember like yeah, she Princey going to the interview and everything, and I'm just like maybe like 10 or 11 at night for me. It was like in the morning for her. I'm just like waiting for her call and stuff like that. And so, and like she finally calls and then she's just like, hey, like I got rejected. And so I'm thinking, bro, like, are you kidding with me right now? Like, this is not the time to mess with me, you know? And then she just kept on saying, like, no, like we got rejected. And so, like, I think at that moment, if I'm being honest, like my fleshly side came out. It was not like I was mad at Princey, but I think like I just like went up to my parents and I was just like, just venting to them and I was like, this is why like I didn't want to do this. The process just takes forever and all these things. And like I remember just like just feeling defeated and just feeling like exhausted, right? Like you just because I for me personally, we're in this like 2 year waiting and then we're like the whole time during the 2 years, like we are feeling peace, right? Like we're like trusting the Lord. But then like we get like partial rejection, not because of what God did, but it was our dumb mistake. Like, we submitted a wrong document. And so it was just like but in that moment, like just feeling exhausted and just feeling defeated, like I remember like that night, like calling like Zach and Jeff, like, and then like I'm just crying and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And like they're asking like, what's the worst case scenario? And I'm like the worst case will be like, if it's fully rejected, then I would have to go to like India and get like we would get married and then we have to file for a spouse visa. And I was just like, yeah, just so tired. And I remember like Jeff at that moment, like just like in our call, he prayed for me. And then like after the call, he like texted me and he was like, hey, Bridgeway is like doing like a prayer meeting on Wednesday. Like, do you want to come for that? Like, just come and just be in God's presence. Like, you don't have to like do anything or whatever. And then I remember just going and I don't know, like I don't know if I was angry, but I was just like sitting like this like the whole time. I was just like, man, like in my mind I was just like, man, how like God, how could you do this to us kind of thing, like just like acting like he owed us something, but it was like, but just like yeah, just wrestling with that idea. Jen Jeff's brother, he told me to go to the prayer team at the end of the service, and he's like, hey, just get prayed over, and I'm like, bro, I'm not gonna do that. And he was like, hey, like these people don't know you, so I think it's best to like just open up to them. Like they're not gonna judge you, they're not gonna say anything else, just gonna pray for you, And so like I remember like them praying, but in their prayer they were like, we are excited for Prince to come soon, And then like the next day I'm just still wrestling with the Lord, and then I think one of the passages that came to my mind was like Psalm 77, and in this psalm it's like the writer is Asaph, and so he's just complaining to the Lord. If you read the whole psalm, he's just like his heart is troubled and he's crying to the Lord, right? And then in one part of the psalm, he's asking these questions, right? He's having a search, like a spiritual, like, he's talking to himself, and he's like asking these questions to himself. And one of the questions he's asking is like, man, like, has God's steadfast love forever ceased? Um, and then are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? And he's like asking these questions, like very honest, right? And then something switches in his mind where in verse 10, he's like, I will appeal to this. So that even in that anger, he's still going back to God. And he's like, okay, I'm going to still appeal to you. Even in my pain, I'm still going to run to you. And in verse 11, he's making this intentional effort to say, I will remember the deeds of the Lord. And then he's like, yes, I will remember your wonders of old. And so for me, we don't have time to go over verse by verse, but in this psalm, the writer is breaking it down, and then after each 4 or 5 verses, it's the word Selah. But then for me, it was time for me to just like pause and just like meditate, and then just be real with God. Just reading this psalm and just knowing that, okay, God put this psalm for a reason, for us to be like honest and raw. So what helped me in that time was like just reading this and just remembering, okay, Lord, I'm going to remember the days of old. So just like being intentional and remembering all the things he's done for us, right? Starting even before we were born, he was just being intentional and like remembering who he is, right? And then like even in our process, like just remembering the small thing he's done for us. I think that helped me like to like regardless of my feelings, like just remembering like, okay, like I'm gonna fix my eyes on you, God, and like regardless of what I feel, I know that your word is true. Like your word does not come back void. Everything that you do for us is for our good and for your glory. You're not doing it to destroy us. And so I think for me, it was like this psalm was that anchor that helped me to be honest, but at the same time, like be intentional. Just remember who God is, and like how amazing and how powerful he is. And I remember the partial rejection, like I was freaking out about like everything, but then just remembering like, man, this is not a surprise to God. He was and he still and he will be seated on the throne, right? And so for me to like just find rest that, man, he knows everything, and in his right time, like he'll open this door, and his name will be glorified. Yeah, like that was my thing. That was my anchor. Princey had like a different passage that like God spoke to her about.
Like he said, we got a partial rejection. And so until then, never. Both of us, we never asked the Lord, Lord, why are you making us wait for like 2 years? There are so many people who are like, they get their visa and they are with each other. Why are you making? Never, not even like a single day we asked the Lord. But then the day we got partial rejection, so I was standing in front of that counselor, right? And so he on my face said that, hey, it's rejected. And so I almost teared up because the first thing that came into my head was like, Allen is waiting for my call. What am I going to tell him now? And so I walk out of the consulate and dad, and there was this Achachan, James. He helped us a lot with the Bombay because I had to go to Bombay to get my paperwork done. He was there to help us throughout the process. And so him and my dad are waiting eagerly to hear that, oh yeah, she got her visa, she's leaving next week or the week after. And I come out and I tell my dad I did not get it, and he's like, okay, it's okay. And then I call him and I'm like, hey, the visa got rejected. And then I think at that point it did not hit me. I went home to that Achachan's house and I slept. And I woke up, I was broken that day. My heart was like broken. I was like, Lord, throughout these 2 years, I never asked you why. I never asked you that, why are you making us wait this long? Why aren't we not hearing from USCIS? Sorry if I tear up right now. But Lord, why are you making us wait? And so that evening in my quiet time, I was asking the Lord, you knew the document was wrong. You knew that we were submitting a wrong document. But why didn't you stop me? Or why didn't someone else come and tell me that, hey, this is a wrong document, you need to go a different route? Or why didn't someone come and like correct me at that very moment? Or why didn't like something happen to stop me so we didn't go through this partial rejection? And while I was like praying, he reminded me of the rotten body of Lazarus. And I was like, rotten body of Lazarus? What are you trying to tell me? And then the next thing that the Spirit clearly reminded me was, not clearly reminded, the clearly said was, my time has not yet come. And I was like, Lord, 21 months and you tell me that your time has not yet come? That was my first question. I was like, Lord, 21 month was not easy. You know the ridicule I've gone through. You know the discouragement I've been through. And 21 months and you tell me that your time has not yet come? I think it was a wrestle for me that evening to ask the Lord, Lord, why are you telling me that your time has not yet come? No answer, silence. And so then after that, we went back to Lucknow and then we applied for the visa again. And so while all this was happening, I met with an accident. Both my dad and I are injured. And all of that was going on. And the passage that he reminded me was 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3, 4, and 5. It says, I'm going to read it. It says, Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. And so that is the passage that God spoke to me from. And the crazy part was the bridge community that he was talking about. It is the same passage that they were sharing from that very evening. So God was speaking to us like differently, different time zone, like different places, but from the same passage. And so that was like crazy because like he said, we were in different time zones and we would not like be able to talk every single day. And so we would like have call once a week, or like though we would text each other every single day, but our intentional conversations were like once a week where we would like talk for hours and hours. And so when we had that call and I was like, hey, this is what the Lord is talking to me from, he was like, that's crazy because this is what he is talking to me from. And so I think that was in that season, like that waiting period after the partial rejection, he was like talking to us individually, but from similar passages. And that was like crazy to us. And like I said, I went back to my hometown and we applied for my visa again. And during that time, only a few people in my community knew that we got a partial rejection. The reason being, I didn't want a lot of people to know because of all that I had been through in the past 2 years. And so I treasured it in my heart. And I also only shared it with my best friends, Priya, Aish, Joel, and James Chachin knew, and my mentor, she knew about it. And so all of them, they were like encouraging me. They were like, hey, if the Lord is talking to you and saying that his time has not yet come, there's something else that he wants you to learn before you enter marriage. And this is what my mentor also told me. She's like, Rachel, I'm officially Rachel. So my mentor is like, Rachel, the Lord is teaching both of you something that you wouldn't learn otherwise. And that's why he's making you wait. And he is promising you that his time has not yet come. And so just trust on him. And at that point, honestly, both of us, I think we wrestled with the Lord, but in that very same week, we reached our peace. And both of us, by God's grace, we were like, this is nothing to boast about ourselves, but the Lord, in his kindness and mercy, taught us to rely on him, even in that season where we knew that after the partial rejection, there's no certainty at all. Until the rejection, there was like uncertainty. But then after the partial rejection, there's no certainty at all. There's like, we don't know when we'll hear from the consulate again. But even through that, the Lord helped us to trust on him. A very common verse that we learn in our Sunday school, it actually came into existence in our lives. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. And so I think those verses that we learned from it, like in our Sunday school, it came into existence and life while we were waiting. Fast forward, we submit my paperwork again, and I go to Bombay. And so nobody knew that I was going to Bombay except for my friend Priya, like except for my close community, except for my friend Priya. The reason she knew was not the reason I wanted to tell her, but also because my dad was by himself and I wanted someone to take care of my dad. And so I was like, hey, I am going, just be here, take care of my dad. And so it was like one day I'm in Bombay, the other day I'm in Delhi, and then I come back. And so the final day when I actually went to Bombay to submit my paperwork, the lady who submitted my document, she was like, hey, it will take 180 days for the consular to look at your case. And so 180 days is 6 months. I did not have any question. I was like, okay, 6 months, good. Because at that point, I think both of us, we were like, the Lord is teaching us something that we wouldn't learn otherwise. And so we were like, okay, 6 months, let's go. And I submitted my paperwork. I come back the very same day to Lucknow, only for us to find that the next day my visa was approved. And that was a shock. It was like a pleasant shock for us because the lady there, she was like, hey, there is no way for the consular to look at your case before 6 months. They take 6 months because there was like partial rejection. So they have their own, they have their own routine, they have their own process. And so there's no way. And so I come back the next day, my visa is approved. And so I was rejected in 22nd of May, 2024, and my visa was approved a week or two later. And then I got my visa issued within that very same month. And so where the lady said that it would take 180 days, within that 180 days, I was in the US, we got married. And we had hit a lot of milestones in that like 6 months that they said that, hey, just for them to look at your case, it'll take them that long. And so even through all of that, when we were like questioning God, when we were like we were in our wrestle, one thing that always like kept coming back to us was like how patient and kind the Lord is. Even, he knew everything. He knows all of it. And even with our wrestle, like he said in Psalm 77, even with our wrestle, even when we say things that we shouldn't say to God, even with that, he's like so patient. Like how, he's a father. Like even when we go to him with our anger and rant and everything, he's just there like patiently listening and also like kind enough to forgive us for whatever we say in our anger and still work on our behalf. And so that's something that was like, yeah, these are the passages that he spoke to us from. There were multiple passages, but these were the profound passages that we got blessed from. And so anyone like who is going through a waiting season, it could look different for like you. Different year has looked different. Like I said, each waiting season is different. It looks different, but how he says that who comforts us in all our affliction so that we may be able to comfort others. One thing that my mentor always tells me is sometimes you go through something or you go through various trials to be able to be a blessing for other people. That was our like small journey of how faithful the Lord
Yeah, and then
is.
one more thing, I think we will feel bad if we don't say it. I think like in the season of waiting, like I want to give a shout out to my church family. I do think like, and this is not like a shameless plug to Hebron, but it's genuinely I felt like they were very encouraging to us in this, especially in the part like when we got partially rejected, like there were brothers and sisters who were like texting me and just sending me encouraging things. So a lot of passages that we were learning, they were sending it to us. I remember, so I would forward those messages and send it to Princey so that she knows that there's this church family who's like praying for us and encouraging us in this time. And then I know what I said about uncles and aunties before, but like there were like few uncles and aunties that genuinely came up to me and they were like, hey, Alan, how you doing? Do you want to come over? And just come and just eat. You don't have to say anything. You just come over and eat. And so, yeah, I would genuinely feel bad like if we didn't give a shout out to the Hebron family. If you guys were there at our wedding, like you guys know we had like 100 random ushers. Like, I don't know why, but we had 100 ushers helping out at our wedding. That's how much like we love them and that's how much they love us. And so, yeah, dude, like I think their prayers like carried us when we didn't feel like praying. Like they interceded on our behalf. And so, yeah, man, super thankful for them. Super thankful for God to teach us a lot of things in this time too. So,
Yeah.
Wow. Um, Thank you, because I've heard y'all's story, but hearing it in depth like that, even with the passage that the Lord used, even irrespective of where you guys were on different sides of the world, but the Lord, used that same passage to encourage both of you guys. That just shows that the Lord is so good. And like you said, Princey, so kind as well. And I think something that both of you guys shared is if community is able to understand that the waiting season is there to shape the body of Christ, like we're supposed to encourage each other, right? And so in y'all's story, you have both examples. One is a community that doesn't understand the wait, that literally uses the wait to discourage, and then another side where the community is literally partnering with what the Lord is doing in both of y'all's life and encouraging and being able to just to be there for you guys. And so that's amazing just to see both of that. And I just like what Sherlyn was saying, I was also there at y'all's wedding. And I think we can definitely say I've been to a lot of fair share of my weddings before, being Indian. But definitely it was just amazing to see both of you guys and the raw emotion that both of you guys had walking towards each other. And I think it was just a testament of what God was doing in both of you separately. And even your guests at your wedding was able to witness what the Lord was doing. And not a lot of people could do that. And that was because of you guys were obedient and you guys were yielded during that season and saying yes to the wait, even though it was hard. But a lot of people and guests were blessed to see the Lord's moving in both of y'all's story. So thank you for that. And I just want to approach the last question, and after that, Princey's going to pray us out. So yeah, and you guys did an amazing job about this, but just to elaborate a little bit, if you were to go back to the beginning of your waiting season, what is something you would want to change about the way you guys approach the waiting?
yeah, I think we both have the same answer on this, but I don't think we will change anything just because I think all the lessons we learned in the waiting and then it's like, what Job says, he goes through a lot of trials. At the end, he's just like, I've always heard of the Lord. Now I've seen him. And then it's at the end of the journey and at the end of the season, like we genuinely felt we got to just see a small glimpse of like, who God really is. So I don't think I would change anything. I don't know if you have anything, but I think it was just so cool to just see how good God is, right? And so, like, I think Princey said this before, when we were like going tantrums and all that stuff, like, even in that, right? He's just like patient. He was just such a good father to us. And then he was just so kind. I don't think we deserved any of it, but even with the fiance visas, we only had 3 months to get married, right? And so man, God was so kind in like working in all the people that we talked to, like with the church and all these different like, vendors and all these things where everything opened up right away. Where like, generally during the wedding planning, I don't think we had that much stress. Other than just individually texting people saying, hey, can you guys RSVP? But other than that, there was no stress on like anything else. Like our shout out to Anu, who was our wedding coordinator. She helped us with everything. And so yeah, man, I just felt like everybody goes through different waiting season, but I think one thing I would say is in the midst of the waiting, even when you feel frustrated, like still run to God, like still run to God. And one of the verse I was thinking about was like a couple of verses, but one of them was like in Hebrews 12, it's like verse 3. It says like consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself so that you may not grow weary or faint hearted. And then there's another verse like in Hebrews 5 where it's like, it says like in the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up like prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears, right? And so he's giving us or showing us like a posture of we can go to the Father like this. And so I think for this season, all the lessons we learned, I think like if we talked about every lesson, it will go for 5 hours. But yeah, like I just said, in a broken world, it was like a perfect story just because he wrote it. It was not like us forcing anything. It was just him writing everything, and he got the glory. He got the glory at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
Yes, just to add on to that, one of the passages that really touched me was Psalms 22, verses 1 to 3. It says, There are times when we feel like, Lord, have you just like forsaken us? Have you like left us? But during those time when we are like waiting and we don't get any answers, here's David. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer. By night I find no rest. Yet you are holy. He says, yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our fathers trusted, they trusted and you delivered them. And so even when he's saying that, Lord, why have you forsaken me? God's character doesn't change. He is holy. He is enthroned on the praises. That was another passage that has encouraged us as well. And so anyone who's like waiting in their like whatever season that looks like, just run to the Father. He's there. He's there for you and he's there to listen and he's there to answer. Like one thing that I always say is there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And so no matter how long the waiting season looks like, I'm not saying that our waiting season is over. We have more waiting seasons ahead of us. But one thing that we have learned in our past waiting seasons is there is end to that season and that end is always beautiful, and so we are ready to wait and learn what the Lord wants to teach us during that waiting season. And so I think both of us, we look forward to the seasons that the Lord is taking us through and will take us through. And so, like I said, to anyone who's waiting, run to the Lord. He's there for you.
Yeah, and we don't want to be like cliche about that. Like a lot of waiting seasons can look different, right? It might be a couple of days, might be weeks, might be months, and different waitings, right? It might be like someone like waiting for a job, waiting for school, waiting for, getting married, waiting to have kids, all these different things, right? And so I think more than like what we can say is this, Jesus is saying like, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, I'll give you rest, right? He can definitely take it. He can definitely take your frustration. He can listen to you. He's not judging you. He's there as a father. And then the coolest thing is like right now, Jesus is there right now, like interceding for us, right? And so it's so cool for us to like just be reminded of that, regardless of what we feel. I don't think in the season of waiting we should ever trust our feelings, because our feelings are just, we can't trust it. And so a lot of times like we hate waiting because we feel like God is so like quiet. He's not there, But someone reminded me that in John 15, the pruning thing, like the vine dresser is closest to the branch when he's pruning, right? And so just know that in the season of your testing, in the season of your trial, God is so near to you. Even he says that God is near to the brokenhearted, right? And so hold on to those like words that God has said, that he is Emmanuel, that he is with you, right? And so again, we don't want to say whatever we went through, just do the same thing. Like, it's not a formula, but it's like our only formula that we can give you, our only advice we can give you is like, man, like just run to God, lean on him. He can take it. He understands what you're going through. He's such a empathetic high priest that he knows, right? He knows every single thing that we're going through. So just run to him.
Dang. No notes. That's it, guys. We gotta go. That was so amazing, guys. Man, youth elders?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
That was amazing. No, for real. I felt so encouraged just hearing how you guys continue to rely on the Lord, and like it feels so raw. Like everything you guys shared, it just feels really raw and really real. No hiding from the fact like these are real life instances that happen and there was pain, but also the Lord came close in a way that you maybe not have experienced before. And so I think that was just really beautiful to hear as you guys were saying your story, and super encouraging. And before I guess end it, I would love it, Princey, if you could just pray over everything that was shared today, that whoever might be listening, that whatever word is kind of like sticking in their mind or sticking in their heart, that God really just works in them and that they take that decision to come close to the Lord in their waiting. And also, if somebody's stumbling onto this podcast and they've never heard about Jesus, just pray for their hearts as well, that this may be a little seed for them to explore and allow the Lord to talk to them in whatever way he does.
प्रेमी दयालु परमेश्वर, बहुत ही नम्रता और दीनता के साथ हम आपके चरणों में आते हैं। पिता, धन्यवाद देते हैं कि आपने हमें जिंदों की जमीन पे रखा है। पिता, अभी तक आपने सृष्टि से भी पहले पिता, सृष्टि से भी पहले आप हमें जानते थे और अब तक आपने हमें संभाल के रखा है, इसलिए हम आपका धन्यवाद देते हैं पिता। धन्यवाद देते हैं कि 2000 साल पहले आपका पुत्र इस धरती पर आया और हमारे लिए अपनी जान को दिया और हमें एक अनंत काल का जीवन दिया पिता, जो हमें किसी और तरीके से नहीं मिल सकता था पिता। धन्यवाद देते हैं कि आपने हमें उद्धार का भेंट दिया है और उस उद्धार के भेंट के तहत पिता हम आपके बेटा और बेटी कहलाते हैं पिता। इस सौभाग्य के लिए हम आपका धन्यवाद देते हैं अब्बा। पिता धन्यवाद देते हैं इस सौभाग्य के लिए कि हम शर्लिन और रेचल के साथ इस पॉडकास्ट को करने वाले हो सके पिता। धन्यवाद देते हैं उन सारे भलाइयों के लिए जो आपने हम सबों के जीवन में किया है पिता। हम इस योग्य नहीं हैं, लेकिन ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ आपकी दया और आपकी करुणा है कि आप हमें यहाँ तक लेके आए हैं पिता। पिता आपका वचन कहता है कि आप कभी भी हमारे दोष के लिए, हमारी हानि के लिए कुछ भी नहीं करते हैं पिता। आपका वचन कहता है कि हमारे जीवन में जो कुछ भी होता है वो सारी चीजें मिलकर भलाई को उत्पन्न करती हैं पिता। हम उस वचन के लिए और आपके उस उद्देश्य के लिए हम धन्यवाद देते हैं पिता परमेश्वर। पिता जो कोई भी इस पॉडकास्ट को सुनता है, हमारी प्रार्थना यह है पिता कि ये पॉडकास्ट उनके लिए एक आशीष का कारण बने पिता परमेश्वर। जिस किसी भी वेटिंग के सीजन में वो हैं पिता, हमारी प्रार्थना यह है कि वो आपके और करीब आने वाले हो सके पिता परमेश्वर। पिता आपको और गहराई से जानने वाले हो सके पिता परमेश्वर, आपको और गहराई से पहचानने वाले हो सके पिता परमेश्वर, और हर एक बात में आपकी ओर दौड़ने वाले हो सके पिता परमेश्वर। जैसे आपका वचन कहता है कि आप टूटे हुए मन वालों के करीब हैं पिता। आप टूटे हुए मन वालों के करीब हैं पिता परमेश्वर। जितने भी लोग हैं, हम जितने भी हम सब पिता टूटे हैं, हम आपकी ओर दौड़ने वाले हो सके पिता। हमारी आंखें आपकी ओर, हम अपनी आंखें आपकी ओर टिकाएं पिता परमेश्वर। जैसा आपका वचन भजन संहिता में कहता है कि मैं अपनी आंखें पर्वतों की ओर उठाता हूं, मेरी सहायता कहां से आती है? मेरी सहायता उस परमेश्वर से आती है जो स्वर्ग और पृथ्वी का रचयिता है। पिता उस वचन पर विश्वास करने पे और उस वचन पर स्थिर रहने में आप हम सबों की मदद सहायता करें पिता परमेश्वर। और अगर ऐसा कोई भी है पिता जो आपको नहीं जानता है पिता, हमारी प्रार्थना यह है कि वो आपको जानने वाला हो सके पिता। उनके दिल और मन को आप खोलें पिता, कि वो आपको जाने और आपको पहचाने और इस बात को जाने कि आप ही मार्ग, सत्य और जीवन है पिता परमेश्वर। आप ही हैं जो हमें परमेश्वर करने वाले हो सके पिता परमेश्वर। पिता मैं शर्लिन को और रेचल को आपके हाथ में सौंपती हूँ पिता। धन्यवाद देती हूँ उनके जीवन के लिए पिता। उनके इंडिविजुअल वॉक्स में पिता आप उनके साथ बने रहें पिता परमेश्वर। आप अपने करीब उनको और लेके आए पिता परमेश्वर। और जो भी वेटिंग सीजन में है वो पिता परमेश्वर, हमारी प्रार्थना ये है कि आप अपने स्वरूप उनको बनाते जाएं पिता परमेश्वर। इस वेटिंग सीजन में जब आप उनको प्रून कर रहे हैं पिता परमेश्वर, हम इस बात को जानते और विश्वास करते हैं पिता परमेश्वर कि आप उन्हें अपने स्वरूप, आप यीशु मसीह के स्वरूप उन्हें बनाते जा रहे हैं पिता परमेश्वर। इसलिए हम आपका धन्यवाद देते हैं पिता। मैं अपने आप को और आलन को भी आपके हाथ में सौंपती हूँ। धन्यवाद देती हूँ कि अब तक आपने चलाया है हमें पिता, आगे भी आप चलाएंगे, यही हमारा विश्वास है पिता परमेश्वर। धन्यवाद देते हैं उन सारी भलाइयों के लिए जो आपने हमारे जीवन में किया है, सिर्फ हमारे ही नहीं पिता, हम सबों के जीवन में किया है पिता परमेश्वर। धन्यवाद देते हैं एक बार फिर कि आपने अपने इकलौते पुत्र को दे दिया, ताकि हम जो कोई उन सारी बातों के लिए धन्यवाद देते हुए ये छोटी सी प्रार्थना यीशु मसीह के नाम से मांगते हैं, Amen.
Amen. That was awesome.
I'm sure you didn't understand anything.
Yeah, we didn't understand a single word, maybe here and there. But I was like, okay, Princy, go ahead then.
I was like smiling. I was like, yes.
I was just clapping, like, come on, God, do it. No, we
But
loved it.
thank you guys. Yes, thank you guys again for sharing your testimony, and we pray that it touches many hearts. And we'd like to thank our audience for listening as well. And thank you for joining season 4, episode 1. I hope you guys have a great week ahead of you guys. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to DM Sherlyn or I. And then also, if you have any questions for Allen and Princy, we can also have them answer any questions that you guys have as well. But for now, thank you guys and goodbye.
Bye,
Thank you for
chakra
having
mas.
us.
Bye, chakra mas.